La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. These are not just words, these are words that have echoed through centuries, words powerful enough to shake hearts, nations, and even the silence of the night itself. But before we go any further, I want you to pause for a moment. Yes, you, the one listening right now. Imagine that you are not just hearing this story, imagine that you are standing inside it. Picture yourself standing on the balcony of your home in the heart of Tel Aviv, or perhaps in occupied Jerusalem. The night is unusually heavy. The sky above you is dark, but it is not the peaceful darkness of a quiet night. It is a darkness filled with smoke, fear, and uncertainty. The air smells of burning metal and dust. And somewhere far away, another explosion tears through the silence. You feel the ground tremble beneath your feet. Listen closely. Can you hear it? The distant echoes of bombs, the sirens cutting through the night, the cries of mothers calling out the names of their sons, the restless footsteps of people who no longer feel safe even inside their own homes. Now imagine standing there, looking down at the silent street below. Windows are dark, doors are closed. But behind those doors, thousands of hearts are beating with fear. And then something happens. Something nobody expected. A man slowly steps out of his house across the street. At first, there is nothing unusual about him. He looks like any other resident of the city. But as he walks under the dim light of the street lamp, you notice something strange. His eyes are red from sleepless nights and endless tears, and in his trembling hands, he is holding a small book. It is a copy of the Quran. For a moment, he stands there in silence, looking up at the sky as if searching for answers beyond the smoke-filled clouds. Then, with a voice that trembles yet carries an unexpected certainty, he says words that seem to break the silence of the entire night. I bear witness that there is no God except Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Think about that for a second. If you were standing there, hearing those words in the middle of a city drowning in conflict, would you believe what you just heard? Because this is exactly the question many people have been asking themselves. How is it possible that, at a time when the world believes the clash between religions has reached its peak, some people are turning toward the very faith they were taught to fear? But here's the truth that many are beginning to notice. After the recent waves of violence, war, and destruction, something unexpected has started to happen. Something quiet, something hidden behind closed doors, but something powerful enough to change lives. More and more people have begun searching for answers they never thought they would look for. You see, when war erupts like a volcano and fear enters every home, many of the beliefs people once trusted begin to collapse like walls made of sand. Young people who grew up hearing only one narrative suddenly begin asking questions. Parents who inherited generations of anger and mistrust begin wondering if the path they followed truly leads to peace. And when everything around you begins to fall apart, the human heart starts searching for something stronger, something real, something that can hold it together. During those long nights when the explosions finally stop and the streets fall into an eerie silence, some people sit alone in their rooms asking themselves questions they never dared to ask before. Questions like, if this endless cycle of hatred is our destiny, then where is the truth? If all this destruction is the result of the path we are following, then where is peace? And it was during nights like these that the first stories quietly began to appear. Stories like the story of Ethan. Ethan was a young Israeli soldier. Every day he carried advanced weapons on his shoulders. Every day he walked through streets filled with tension and uncertainty. And every day he saw things that most people would never want to see. He saw death standing just a few steps away. He carried wounded friends. He attended funerals of people he once laughed with. And every night, when he returned home, he felt something inside him breaking. All his life he had been told that his mission was sacred, that everything he was doing was necessary. But after every violent encounter, something heavy settled on his chest, a weight that refused to disappear. Then one night, something happened that changed his life forever. His younger brother was killed in a tragic incident connected to the conflict. That night, Ethan sat alone in his room. No television, no phone, just silence. And one question repeating inside his mind again and again. Is this really the path God chose for us? In the days that followed, Ethan did something he had never done before. Quietly, secretly, he began searching beyond the ideas he had always been taught. One day, he came across something unexpected. A translation of the Quran. At first, he opened it out of curiosity, but as he began reading, something unusual happened. The verses spoke about mercy, about justice, about the value of human life. And slowly, the storm inside his heart began to calm. Night after night, he continued reading in secret. He listened to recitations through headphones so no one could hear. The words of the Quran began filling the emptiness he had carried for so long. Then one night he decided to try something. He performed the prayer. For the first time in his life, he placed his forehead on the ground in prostration. And at that moment, he broke down in tears. Weeks later, just before sunrise, he spoke the words that changed everything. The words of the testimony of faith. From that moment, Ethan was no longer the same person. He chose a new name, Abdullah. He left behind the anger and confusion that had defined his life for years, and for the first time, he felt something he had not felt in a long time: peace. But here is the surprising part. His story did not remain alone, because not long after, another story began to spread quietly. The story of Rachel. Rachel was a mother who once lived a peaceful life with her small family. But war has a cruel way of destroying even the simplest happiness. During one violent attack, her young daughter lost her life. Imagine standing beside the grave of your child. Imagine crying until your tears run dry. That was Rachel's reality. Every night she looked up at the sky asking the same question. Why? Why would God allow such pain? During those dark days, she heard whispers about people who had found comfort in a book that spoke about patience, mercy, and the promise that suffering is never meaningless. That book was the Quran. At first she hesitated, but grief has a way of opening doors the mind once kept closed. Slowly she began reading the Quran in private. The verses spoke about God's compassion, about the reward waiting for those who endure hardship with patience, about the idea that no tear goes unseen. And strangely, those words began healing a wound she believed would never heal. Then one night she saw something in a dream, a soft light surrounding her and a voice calling her toward peace. When she woke up the next morning, she knew her heart had already made its decision. She accepted Islam, and she chose a new name: Fatima. Today, Fatima says something that surprises many people. She says that even though she lost her daughter in this world, she found a kind of peace she never knew existed, because every time she prays, she feels that her pain is being heard. But the stories did not end there. Another story soon followed, the story of Yusuf. Yusuf was not a soldier. He was not a grieving parent. He was a scholar, a man who spent his entire life studying history and religion at universities. For years, he believed that no religion could claim absolute truth. But the recent conflict forced him to rethink everything. He saw how hatred could destroy entire communities. He saw how war could erase decades of progress. And he began asking himself a question that many intellectuals struggle with. If humanity keeps repeating the same cycle of violence, where is the moral framework strong enough to stop it? So he began studying the original texts again. He compared the Torah and the Quran. He examined historical records. He studied the message of Prophet Muhammad. And slowly he began noticing something that deeply surprised him. The Quran offered answers to questions he had been asking for years, questions about justice, equality, and the dignity of human life. After months of research, Yusuf finally made a decision. He publicly announced that he had embraced Islam. Today, he quietly shares his journey with others, explaining how the search for truth led him somewhere he never expected to go. And this is where things become even more remarkable. Because these were not isolated stories. They were the beginning of something larger. Across different cities, small private gatherings began forming. People met quietly to discuss faith. Copies of the Quran passed from one hand to another. Behind closed doors, new Muslims prayed together. Some of them feared social pressure, some feared rejection. But the peace they felt in their hearts gave them courage. One person described hearing the call to prayer from a distant mosque and suddenly bursting into tears. Another said that the first time he bowed his head in prayer, he felt as if a lifetime of weight had been lifted from his shoulders. And with every new story, the number of people discovering Islam continued to grow. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds, and now thousands. Many of them have even begun sharing their journeys openly on social media, speaking about how they found faith in the middle of chaos. Now let me ask you something. If people living in the very center of conflict can find peace through faith, what about you, right now, wherever you are listening from? What path are you walking? Because the message of Islam has never belonged to one nation or one culture. It is a message meant for every human being searching for truth. Those who embraced it did not lose anything. They gained something far greater. A peace that wealth cannot buy. A purpose that fear cannot destroy. And perhaps the most powerful part of this entire story is this. For many of these people, embracing Islam was not the end of their journey. It was the beginning of a new life, a life guided not by hatred or revenge, but by faith, patience, and hope. Maybe the next story of transformation has not been written yet. Maybe, just maybe, that story could belong to someone listening right now.